In a world filled with sharks, bears, and killer bees, one man is brave enough to stay indoors to bring you the latest in gaming, movie, and pop culture news. That man is Tom Awesome, and this is the Outside is Overrated podcast.
Hello, and welcome to Outside is Overrated Game Club. Today, we're not ready, but we're talking about Gloomhaven by Flaming Fowl Studio and Saber Interactive Minsk. That's not bad for having my show notes cut off like the middle of that line. Let's zoom right out on that. I'm your terrifically prepared and always magnanimous host, Tom Sidlogic, and joining me for the discussion today are Munch Time, John Munch.
Let's go.
Or Minnesota Munch.
I like it. Soon to be Minnesota Munch.
Yeah.
That.
Or the number Muncher, huh?
Oh, that I've heard that one before.
Yeah, when I'm an expert at beating a dead horse, yeah. Anyways, also here is the Hobby Box, Joe Burns.
Heyo.
Outside is Overrated is presented by Premier Health. Check out their website at premierhealthmn.com. That's Premier Health, MN, as in Minnesota.com. In this monthly segment, we play a game with our community and invite our Patreon supporters to join the discussion. If you want to join in, support Outside is Overrated on Patreon at patreon.com/OiO. You can help for as little as $2 a month. So here's what we're going to cover tonight with Gloomhaven. We're going to discuss what is Gloomhaven. We're going to talk about our initial characters, and then we'll break down our thoughts on the structure and gameplay. The digital edition of Gloomhaven released in September of 2022 and has a Metacritic rating of 82. The core gameplay loop of Gloomhaven involves taking a team of mercenaries out on a mission, fight through some tactical battles with card-based encounters, then you upgrade your town and unlock new characters. Gloomhaven is a digital adaptation of the board game, where you fight through those tactical battles, resolve encounters in town and on the road, level up your characters, and unlock new avatars to repeat the loop almost endlessly. Burns, you played through all of Gloomhaven on the tabletop. How well does this adaptation capture the spirit of one of your all-time favorite games?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a solid digital representation. There's maybe a few glaring frustrations and bugs that I guess annoyed me from time to time, but it's definitely a more than adequate way to play Gloomhaven, especially if, in this case, we have people across states and can't really play the board game together. So I think it's pretty good that way.
Well, not even across states. Like, we're playing true cross-platform here, because, like, you and I are based in Minnesota, but, like, we try not to physically occupy the same space at the same time. John lives in Indiana, and Burns, you played on the PS5. John played on Steam. I played on Epic, and with the exception of me getting frequently booted out after missions, it was a rather seamless experience. John, you haven't really played the board game before. How was this adaptation, or how was this digital version of such a popular board game for you?
So I will say, not 100% that I've never touched it, because we did play like the virtual tabletop version, right? Together with a couple people from OiO, and that familiarized me with the rules and kind of like, I got to see like how the physicality worked, right? Where like, where you're having to like, figure out who's closest to the enemies to know who the enemies are attacking and all those sorts of rules, right? So taking that though and shifting, I think it's like Joey said, it's a fantastic adaptation, right? So I was familiar with those base mechanics, but like the overall idea and how it's kind of done for us, I thought smooths out so many of those edges and was a great way to play.
Yeah, and I guess since John brought up playing it on Tabletop Simulator, which, because the pandemic happened, that's how we finished playing Gloomhaven with my gaming group that we're playing through it on the table. This is a lot less clunky than the Tabletop Simulator way to play the game. So yes, I'll agree with Munch on that. If you had to choose between the two, Tabletop Simulator, if you own it, you can play Gloomhaven for free, I guess, by downloading the mod for it. But yeah, I think it's worth it to buy the digital version because it's a lot easier to run. I think Tabletop Simulator works okay if you're familiar with playing the game and setting up the game in real life. But it would be very cumbersome if you're coming in blind to the Gloomhaven experience trying to play it that way.
Yeah. The other thing too, I will say, coming into this game is I really did, I was anticipating like the D&D aspects, right? I mean, like you're an adventuring party going to Gloomhaven in a town, right? And I thought that like the storytelling though was going to kind of fall away with the digital version, right? When you're playing through, you're reading cards and like you can kind of, if you have someone who like leans into that, they can make it really cool. And I feel like the game does a great job of kind of bringing that storytelling to life in a really simplified manner, right? So there's no huge flashy cutscenes and stuff, but you are getting some great animations where they do like some really cool just like camera panning, and like they do only narrate certain key events, right? So like your city events and that stuff, that's not narrated. They save money, right? But where they really wanted to make an emphasis on the story, they did a really good job.
Yeah, and I think I completely forgot about it till you brought it up, but that is an awesome aspect of this game. Like the narrator that they use for it, it's just the one person's voice, but he's phenomenal at it. And that's the one thing when playing on the tabletop, because I have to read it, otherwise I'm probably not kind of comprehend it if I'm just listening to somebody else say it. So I don't really know with everybody else when we're playing, like in person, if they're actually like catching everything that's being said or not, or understanding what's being said. So yeah, I think the narration is fantastic that way. It makes it interesting leading up to the scenario to get an idea of what it is that you're doing there, and setting the stage for everything.
Yeah, so the storytelling is awesome. I think there are so many positives to playing this game in particular in a digital format. Like, the automations are so nice. It's like no time digging through a rule book. Like, the enemies just do what the enemies do. Like, you don't have to think about it. Like, I've played Gloomhaven on the tabletop multiple sessions, and I don't know how enemies actually work. But with this, I don't really have to. It's like, all right, here's what I can do with my offensive thing. It's my turn in the order, and so these are the guys I can reach. Either that was optimal and I'm great, or that was suboptimal and we'll try harder next time. But I just love how everything's so automated and no setup or teardown. Specifically with this game, that's a huge win. And like, if you want to protect your copy of Gloomhaven, sleeve all your cards, organize everything, like it is a massive burden to entry for this game. And Gloomhaven is a phenomenal, top-notch board game. And I just love having this digital experience where like I don't have to spend any time like organizing it.
Yeah, I will say one thing, though, that you do miss from that, right, is there are certain times where rules will kick in, right, that as humans we would have said, oh, well, that doesn't count, right? So, like, the computer is very much a computer, and it says, like, if 1 + 1 is 2, it's 2, buddy, sorry. And, like, so we, like, one scenario where, like, I didn't get, like, a perk point, right, because my interpretation of the rule was if I control a guy, if I mind control him and he kills someone, that's still my kill, right? Mm-hmm. But the game was like, no, that dude killed him, so you don't get your perk point. So there are those things that, like, you don't get, like, a quick mulligan, or you don't get, like, oh, I don't understand it. Like, so you have to be ready for that. And it may be a little bit of jank involved in it, but you do have to be ready for the, like, I thought that I had line of sight, and technically I do, and then like, nope, sorry, you don't, technically, because the game is very technical in how it does it.
Yeah, and to use your example and break that out for how the board game would work for that specific instance is somebody would say, hey, if my summon kills something, do I get credit for it? And then we'll say, I don't know. Open up the rule book, flip around, go to this page. No, it's not here. Go to this page. All right, everybody get out your phone. Somebody's searching on Board Game Geek. Somebody's looking through the FAQ. Somebody's looking at Reddit. And it's like a 25-minute process to figure out how it works. Which, I mean, it maybe has its merits, but that's not nearly as effective or efficient, I guess would be the better word, than just having the game say, nope, you're screwed. And, you'll be like a little, well, that sucks that it works that way. But then you get over it instead of 25 minutes, and it's like, well, it's weird that it works that way. But then you have the option to sort of say, well, that's stupid. Let's just play it this way. Because, having that house rule ability definitely helps with a game that's as technical as you were saying, John, and as difficult at times, as we'll probably get into a little bit. of some of our foibles so far in this game.
I will say though, I'll trade House Rule to save 25 minutes, right?
It's
Like
true.
the digital version works so well, right? Like in our sessions, which are very limited, right? I would say between an hour to 2 hours on average, right? We were usually playing 2 to 3 campaigns, right? Like, which is pretty impressive for Gloomhaven, in my opinion, right? Just kind of understanding how the board works and how it goes. Like normally, right? If you guys were meeting and you were together, like how long would one like mission take in real time? Because they always took us about an average of an hour.
Yeah, I mean, in real life, pretty much every scenario would have been like an hour and a half to 2 hours. If there's some that'll be faster, there's some that will be longer. I mean, there's instances that we've had where it would be like 4 hours to get through something because there's just a lot of things that happened, or we had questions, or just a couple people really got into the deep think because it was important that they made the right decision at a certain point. The digital game's not going to get rid of some of that, but it still streamlines it a lot, so that you don't run into a lot of those other time costly things.
Yeah, so if I'm hearing John correct, we should just get rid of all like paper and cardboard board games and just go all digital all the time for all life.
Just bring a laptop and we'll just LAN party it up. LAN board game party. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah, sounds awesome. So Gloomhaven starts you off with an interesting slate of characters. I played as a weird-looking mage dude called a Spellweaver. Burns was a rockman race called a Craighart, and John was a little rat dude. John, what were your impressions of playing the Mind Thief?
Man, like, dude, I love this little character, right? It's so cool because to me it was one of these great characters that really showed the flexibility of the game, right? Like, as you guys talk about your characters, I feel like your guys' characters are much more just like me big tank and me big damage. And the Mind Thief really gave me that ability to like change how I wanted to play as the character like leveled up, to where you could control other people and like sit in the back. You could like rush in and attack everything real quick and then disappear into a puff of smoke, right? And just let me do some really fun, cool stuff between like all that and summoning rats, or like pulling up a ton of loot and being able to do that. So I've had a lot of fun with the character. I'm excited to eventually retire him to try new stuff, but like I think he was a great character for me to start out with.
Yeah, and what kind of starting tactics did you have? Like when we played our first few campaigns, what were you trying to do with the Mind Thief? And then how did that evolve to what you're doing now?
So initially with the Mind Thief, you can like do augments, right? So you burn a card that you say, hey, look, I'm going to do this, but then it gives me, some will be like +1 or +2 to my attacks, right? Or another might be like when I attack, I muddle and poison someone, right? Or you might do one where you gain like defense, right? And my whole thing was like, go big or go home, right? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go in with as many things that I can just run in and stab people and then do something to disappear, like go invisible, or like do a movement card, like to come in and poke someone, and then like do another one to run away, right? Go last, right? So you can come in and attack people and then go really fast to the beginning of the next turn, and so that I can attack people and then run away. So that was my kind of thing, like lots of attack, right? And as my character grew, right, I actually now stay kind of in the back more because I unlocked a bunch more ranged attacks, where now I'm doing all sorts of different things where like I have one attack that like lets me like attack 5 characters and muddle them all so they perform poorly, right? And that's saved our bacon several times, right? I have like another card where I just get to like burn it and like kill somebody instantly and attack people around him. So I've shifted that up to try and just stay alive longer and burn less cards so that I can like muddle all kinds of people or do more range damage, to do like a lot of stuns and things of that nature.
Yeah, it has been awesome to behold. And like, you do go big, man. Like, you will run in, smoke an elite enemy, and it's like, oh, well, that would have taken me multiple turns to do. You make me feel very inadequate, plus you get all the loot.
The other cool thing, right, and as you get into Gloomhaven, we can talk about it more in the combat, but the leveling up system and how like you modify your deck, the Mind Thief has I love his deck modifiers because you very quickly easily get rid of all your negative cards. So you are you always feel like you're hitting and you're doing damage and you're attacking stuff, which is fun.
Yeah, no whiffs there. Burns, tell us about the mighty Craighheart.
Yeah. So I've played. I'm trying to remember back to when I played the. I think I played the Craighheart when we played the board game. It wasn't when I wasn't the first person to play the character. I think I played it down the line when we didn't have anything new to play. Once we'd played like all of the different characters. So the Craighheart is great because there's a lot of versatility with the character. So you have 12 cards, which is the most out of any of the characters, starting characters for sure. I think the Tinkerer has 12 cards too, but we didn't play with the Tinkerer. And the thing with the Craighheart, especially as you get through the first couple of levels, is you have the ability to kind of to be flexible to sort of specialize in a couple of different things. So you could either be Mr. Melee, Mr. Tank, or you could be more ranged and just shooting at things if you don't need the Craighheart to be a tank. Since our group, we didn't really have anything else that could take damage, I ended up having to play that role, so I don't really use a lot of the ranged cards. But it's nice as this character to have the flexibility to kind of go either way and still make it work. The thing that's unique to the Craighheart compared with the other starting characters is the ability to place and destroy obstacles in order to disrupt kind of the layout of the map and to control enemies. And there's times where that has come in like supremely clutch for us as a group. The one drawback to that strategy is there are definitely some maps that we've played on where it really is a non-factor. Like, you know, or it's like extremely prohibitive. If I throw down 2 obstacles, they're just going to completely get in the way of us. And so it's a little bit tricky because then it gets down to some of those scenarios, or you don't have obstacles to like push things into to destroy and cause extra damage. And so it's one of those things where it gets tricky because then you feel like, oh, I don't have, like, my sort of shtick doesn't really matter here. And so it can be a little bit more, it's very scenario driven as to whether you're going to be able to use that ability to a great effect, or if you're going to be chucking those cards kind of early and just sort of focus on either more damage dealing or damage taking. So that would be the one like drawback, I guess, that I would say with the Craighheart at least. But at least you're flexible enough that you have enough cards that you could do a couple of different things and focus a couple of different ways. And you're not just like, oh, well, I'm only all obstacles, and so now I'm screwed if it just doesn't make sense for this map. So I guess we could go to John, and then maybe Tom, you could touch on this when you get to your character. What would you say? So that was me talking about like what the drawbacks were for my character. What are probably the drawbacks that you guys have for the characters that you played as?
Can't hear you, John.
Sorry. For my character, he's pretty squishy, right? Only starts out with 6 hit points, right? So you have to play your cards really, really well. So it's really easy to like mess up and then just get smoked, right? The other thing is card management, right? So, you know, a lot of my better abilities, right, you have to like burn and like you don't get back. So you have to be very, very strategic when you do burn things and say, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get rid of this card, right? Because, you know, when you burn something and get rid of it, that determines like how many rounds you get like the next time, right? You run out of moves eventually. So like if I do my augment right away, hey, I don't get that card back to replay, right? So I'm making a risk to say I want to do more damage on every turn, even though I'm going to get less turns. So, you know, as I've gotten, you know, a different deck and you're adding more cards and building it out, that's shifted and changed. But that's definitely was initially the harder thing, right? And it helps I have some other nice items that like make everybody else get hit and not me, which help with that as well. So I could be more aggressive, but that's probably the biggest shortcoming.
Yeah, and just to explain that mechanic a little bit, so, you know, and we're going to talk a little bit more about playing the cards, but like John was saying, so you either play a card and it goes to your discard pile, which means that after you do a rest, you'll get those cards back. You'll have to get rid of one card on a rest. But otherwise, if you burn a card, that means that you will lose it. And usually those cards that have burn abilities are going to give you some sort of, like, it's usually a stronger attack or a stronger ability or a summon. Pretty much all the summons in Gloomhaven, all the summon cards are burn cards also. So they stay out as long as the summon's there, and then they go away. Some other things I think people have is it'll give you an ability that just lasts throughout the game, but that card is kind of, once if that would get thrown away, it would go to your lost pile as well. And so I guess that's sort of a key mechanic to help explain that maybe a little bit more what John was saying. So yeah, it's a very delicate balance to determine when you're going to actually burn a card to do something a little bit better, right, Tom?
Well, let me take that and turn it right on its ear, Burns, because I played as the Spellweaver, and the Spellweaver is awesome. Like, picture a mage chucking fireballs from the back, and you're pretty much there. Similarly squishy to the Mind Thief, but nearly half of the Spellweaver's abilities are burn cards. Usually you have some functionality. You'll have an attack up top that makes it a burn card, or you'll have a movement down on the bottom. And so you have all these awesome attacks, but then once you use them, they're gone. One of the things that make the Spellweaver unique is they have a card that brings back all of your lost cards. So while John and Joy are burning cards, those cards are gone for the rest of the scenario, I get everything back once. So the interesting thing with the Spellweaver is just conserving your strength until you get to like the final fight in a campaign, because it is very easy to be like, oh, well, to get my perk point, I gotta be the first one to kill something, so burn card, burn card, burn card, burn card, and then it's like you retire halfway through, and it's like, well, I hope you guys can finish this so we get our rewards. Good luck, guys. And that was the biggest lesson that I had to learn, was just slowing my roll and making sure that those burn cards really counted, and making sure that I had something in my bag of tricks when we get to like the final group of enemies that we were fighting in a scenario. And
yeah, I mean, I would agree. Like, I've not played as a Spellweaver, maybe once or twice in the digital game, but the Spellweaver out of the starting characters is probably my favorite, just because of just how like strong some of the abilities get. Tom, do you think you're going to play this character to level 9?
I hope so. I mean, I hope we keep playing and that I can get up to level 9.
No, but I mean, do you think you're going to retire before you hit level 9?
Well, I can't find any little rat dudes to kill, so I think I'm pretty safe.
Okay. Maybe for the next episode, then we can talk about the 9th level card that became like the favorite of our entire group when we played through the board game version. So we'll table that one, and then once you're done with the Spellweaver, we'll maybe go back to that whenever we get to part 2 of this.
Sounds good. And so John had these big, massive attacks. He'd run in, he'd smoke something, and then he'd disappear. Burns had a lot of versatility. The Spellweaver spreads damage out more. Like, I generally had more attacks that would target more things but do less overall damage. So I really liked the way it was set up, but sometimes I was jealous of not getting all those kills. It's like, oh, well, sure, it's helpful for me to weaken 3 dudes at a time. It's like I get a lot of experience for the things that I'm doing, and that's all great, but it's like, man, I want to be the one like smoking all these fools, and like I'm not quite there with the Spellweaver at like level 4 or 5. The basic structure of the game follows this blueprint. You do a town encounter, which is reading a card and choosing as a group what to do. Then you choose which quest to attempt out of everything you've unlocked. Then on the way to that quest, you do a road event, which is essentially the same as a town event. You read a card, do a thing. Then you do your mission, go back to town, and level up to buy stuff. John, being relatively new to the game, did you enjoy the overall formula?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it really is just streamlining a D&D campaign down to like some of the basic core components, right? And then gives you some fun kind of randomized choices, right? So, hey, you run out, you do a dungeon, you come back, you go to the bar, or you go here, you go there, and maybe you do get some fun randomization that ties into that. That like if you go to the bar and you do this thing, well, maybe you run into a guy and it opens up something else on the map. So it takes that like D&D campaign and just says, okay, look, we know you're here for the combat, right? Mm-hmm. And the loot and the dungeon, and that's why you're here, but we're at least gonna like have a little D&D fun and like give you some stuff to break apart, so that we're not just saying, okay, go to the next dungeon and go here. It ties into this nice overworld narrative that I really like.
and nobody ever gets stuck waiting around while somebody sneaks around the dungeon, like tiptoeing around every corner to like look at something and then come back to report it. It's like, we could all just walk up there and like fight the things. Like, I'm pretty sure that up in that cavern, down the next hallway, there's going to be a dude to fight. And then let's go to the next room and let's fight the next dude.
Just think of how terrible that would be in Gloomhaven if you had one character that was moving around and sneaking around and everybody else just had to like continue to discard two cards every turn while they did all that BS. Like it would make it even more painful than in D&D.
Yeah, it'd be excruciating. So, Casey, don't play Gloomhaven with us. Where on earth were we talking? What were we talking about?
Just how it was like D&D and having the different stuff on the map. So this aspect of it, like the general breakdown of how the game works, it's interesting to be playing Gloomhaven after playing through half of Frosthaven. I don't know how far into Frosthaven we are. Well, I know we are 5 seasons into Frosthaven would be the best way to explain it, since we just made it to our third winter. But basically, it's interesting because in Frosthaven there is a lot more that happens in between your scenarios, because you're building up your outpost, you're building aspects of the town. The outpost events are a lot more. The things that happen that are like the same as like town events are a lot more involved at times in Frosthaven. And so part of me really likes the more streamlined, simple, okay, we're back, this happens, we can buy stuff. Sometimes something levels up and we get more items in there, and then it's time to just go out again. So part of me enjoys that, but then part of me also yearns a little bit for some more interactivity in that aspect of Gloomhaven. So yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting going through Gloomhaven again now, with all the experience that I've had with Frosthaven.
So Burns wants every game to be everything. All right, got it. John, I think he said it really well. And a lot of the town and road encounters come down to a very binary choice. Either you do the good thing or you do the bad thing. At one point, there's an attack on the town, and we decided to go looting. And it's like, oh, we found this cool thing, and now we have this gear that either one person has or we can go back and buy. Another time, we talked to somebody, we bought a coin from them, and that opened up a new quest on the map, which was kind of cool. So it's you don't have to spend a lot of brain power, which feels good after like you go through this punishing dungeon. Maybe you win, maybe you don't, but then it's like, all right, well, now we can just choose to do this, and are we going to be the good guys or the bad guys? I like that. Regarding the story, I feel like we've barely scratched the surface. We have played, I think, 16-ish hours of Gloomhaven together, the three of us. We've been through maybe 10 to 12 scenarios, and we're just barely scratching the surface. We have 2 main arcs going. In one, we have to choose whether to support the town guard or overthrow them with a hot necromancer, and the other main arc involves a mysterious elemental portal. We have generally been playing in a very roguish way. Burns, given that you've experienced Gloomhaven before, have any of our collective choices surprised you?
Well, you make it sound a lot worse that you make it sound like we're very evil with supporting this as you put it, hot necromancer. But in supporting her, we're also supporting the merchants in the town instead of the guard of the town, and so it's a little bit more gray and not as black and white as to whether it's good or evil, because and if you think of it as a mercenary group, yeah, you want to be friends with the merchants, you could get better stuff from them. And so it kind of makes sense. As far as the decision making goes, since I played through the game on the tabletop, granted it's been a few years, so things are definitely not as fresh up in this old noggin as they would probably be if I just played the tabletop game. I'm trying to still take a backseat to a lot of the decision making, because I just don't want to steer you guys in a certain direction, because either we went down that path before and I'd like us to go down that path, or I went down a different path and I want to see the other side of it. So I'm really just sort of taking a step back and trying to let the group make decisions unless we need a tiebreaker, and then I'll just sort of push it in a direction, I guess. And granted, secretly I do want us to make opposite decisions just so I can see the other side of things. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's been fun. I don't think anything's outright surprised me as to the decisions that we've made. So I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in the moment it's like, am I gonna wake up at some point and be like, oh, we really are the bad guys? Maybe. I don't know.
So Burns is comfortable living on the dark side. John, how do you feel about our path in this game?
Well, like, I do feel like we're going down the bad guy path, but what I've actually really liked about Gloomhaven is that, kind of what we already said, there's no good guy, shiny paladin, chaotic good Robin Hood path, right? Like, everything in Gloomhaven is kind of like, look, you guys are like skeevy mercenaries, right? And you're only out for you, and all of your choices are usually like, do you want to like do something that is kind of okay, or do you want to do something that is like really bad or really kind of okay? Like, it's never black and white. So, and I like that because it's actually pushing me out of my comfort zone, because normally I gravitate towards chaotic good. That's my D&D alignment I always play, right? I want to be the hero that's not like, lawful good and follows, the law of the letter. I want to be that Robin Hood character because that's fun, and it's actually been refreshing to play a game where I don't feel like I'm missing out on that storyline that I normally like by picking the kind of like, the quote-unquote bad path. Like, no, let's sign up with the necromancer and go for the merchants, because you know what? The town guards aren't that great either. So we picked a side, and now we're just going to stick with it and go with it, and it's been fun so far. I'm excited to see how it turns out, too.
I identify as chaotic neutral. I think a lot of my friends would give me a bad rap as like chaotic evil in my, moment-to-moment dealings in games. And I think that's a little unfair. I certainly bring a lot of chaos to games, but I really like how Gloomhaven is giving us some interesting choices, and it doesn't seem to, make a major impact on our campaign. It's like nothing so far that we've chosen to do has sealed off any of our campaign options. And there haven't seemed to be any like super negative consequences for doing something that isn't traditionally hero-like.
Yeah, we're kind of in the first spot where I think both of the paths that we're going down, so like the decisions that so the one decision that we made to fight the guards and support Jex around the merchants, is like one of the first like sort of points. So it's like once we finish the one, we can't go the other direction. And I think one of the other paths that we're on is it's either, the portal that we found, it's either go through the portal or find this person that might know about the portal. And I think we went through the portal and got beat pretty bad. But then again, that's kind of been our MO in quite a few of these scenarios.
Hey man, sometimes you just got to take a swing to know what you're capable of.
It's true. And the town guard, they're pretty hard to take down, we've found.
Yeah, next time that dude's going
next
down.
Time.
Combat is card-based. You choose 2 cards to play on your turn. Each card generally has an attack action and a move action. After you play your attack action and choose your targets, you flip a modifier card, and this can range from an outright miss to a critical hit that does double damage, with other positives and negatives mixed in. As you level up your character or gain perks, you can manipulate this deck, either removing negatives or adding positives. John, is this a satisfying progression system?
Yeah, I mean, I really, really love this system. It kind of lends itself to a flexibility that, is challenging. That, like, if you don't play it right, you can do whatever you want. You can do, like my character, like I said, range, close. If you don't plan right, you'll kind of be screwed. So you do get to benefit from knowing what you want to do with your character. And then tied into that, I love how like the leveling up works with it, right? So that, you are actually, when you level, you get new cards, which great. I get a new ability every time that they really do make an impact to how you build your character, right? So like both those modifiers and those new cards are always super awesome. And then on top of that, then you also get to say like, okay, well, here's the deck I'm building, right? How do I want to modify my modifier decks to say like, yeah, I really want to focus on getting more stuns out there. So I'm going to put the stuns in my deck, or I'm going to, remove my negatives, or I'm going to put in my +2s versus my +1s because I'm going to be a glass cannon and go for all or nothing, right? So it gives you that flexibility in a really simple way where you don't have to be like, well, shoot, I got to take 4 perks of weapon mastery in order to get the +2, and then at this level I'm gonna multi-class to get 1 thing of thief so that I can go ahead and get this other tumbling skill and this and that, so you can min max a pathway or D&D, right? Which I love doing that too, but in this game it's just great. Sweet, here's my abilities. I pick one. I like that card. Let's move forward.
Yeah, streamlined is a word that we just... Oh, sorry, Burns. I just wanted to point out, streamlined is a word that we just keep coming back to again and again. For this being... It's the designer's first game, right? Isaac something. It's the first game that he's designed?
It's his second game. His first game didn't sell a lot till after Gloomhaven became popular. But yeah, it's his second game, and it was by far bigger than his first game, Forge War.
Yeah, well, it's bigger than excuse me, almost every game, right? But it's just impressive how many times we're saying the word streamline with these different systems. Burnsy, are there any potential negatives to a card-based combat system?
Maybe. I guess I don't think so. So I guess I want to go back and touch on what John was saying with the modifier deck, because that's also one of the most novel things about this game, and one of the things that I enjoy a lot as well. Now, the whole reason why the system was created for the board game was the creator of the board game, Isaac Childress. One of his big things that he hated about D&D, he loved playing D&D, and he actually, ironically, I think kind of loved trying to min-max characters and stuff like that, but he hated just how, impersonal and uncharacterful D20 rolls are. Because it's just and it's something that just never changes. Sure, maybe your to hit bonus goes up, but you're still just rolling the same D20 all the time. And ironically, the modifier deck kind of starts off like a D20. You have the 1 miss, so that's going to be your 1. You have a -2 on your attack. That'd be rolling a 2, and so on and so forth. Then you have a handful of -1s, a handful of +0s, a handful of +1s, then 1 +2, and 1 ×2, which would be your critical hit. But the fact that you get to sort of change that out, you're almost taking apart portions of your D20 and saying, oh, okay, well, when I roll a 15, actually now it does this. Or for some characters, because John was saying, part of what he likes about his character is that you're whittling away all of your negatives and you have a much smaller deck, but it's hitting all the time. Some characters, you actually end up just adding a bunch of cards to your deck. So you're basically flooding it with extra things or abilities that you can trigger so that it mitigates your opportunities for getting the -2s and the -1s that are still in your deck. And so it's a really cool way to make that a more purposeful decision as to what you want this character to do and how you want them to act. And so then it also makes it, depending upon how I would choose perks for the Mind Thief and how John chooses perks for the Mind Thief, it'll play a little bit different. Or what card I choose when I level up might be the opposite of what John chose. Or I play with some of the X cards and John didn't touch any of the X cards. And so there's just so many aspects to it that I think allow you to add your personal touches to it, which is different, I think, than a lot of other role-playing games in general, but then board games as a whole. So I think that's why I really like the modifier card system specifically.
Yeah, and also add on top of that, each one of the characters has slightly different perks, different things that they can do with their modifier deck. You both have an ability where you can ignore any negative effects that are in place for the campaign. The Mind Thief doesn't have that, so I don't know how much variation there is between characters, but there's at least some degree of variation in how you can build up that modifier deck, which is also cool.
And a lot of those things tend to depend upon what the species type a lot of the time. So it'll be all of the Inox characters, the Brute is an Inox, and there might be other Inox characters that we unlock in the game, will have certain things that they do. All of the Savas, which is what the Craigheart is, would have certain types of those things that they would do. Some of those innate abilities. Same thing with the Vermlings or the Orchids, or the humans or the Volraths are kind of the main races that are in the game. they'll have like one or two of those perks that are kind of typical along through the species, but then everything else, a lot of the other decisions you're making are mostly unique to your character class.
Yeah, I can't wait to unlock more characters. That's going to be super rad. Burnsy,
Mm-hmm.
did we ever run into incidents where people were making mistakes with the actions that they could take on their cards?
How do you mean by that? Oh, got it. Yeah. So the one thing with okay, good thing that you called back to that because I wrote that down, but I wanted to talk about the other thing. So with playing the cards, the one tricky thing that you have, John knows nothing about this, is you're going to pick your cards for your actions, and then you're sort of not I don't mean overthinking it, but you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to do this action, and you're trying to do the top action on both cards, and then you play them, and you don't realize it until you reveal, and you're like, well, crap, I screwed that up. How do I salvage this? And, that's one of the things where, I mean, my gaming group has played, probably, we're probably at over 200 scenarios at this point, between Gloomhaven and Frosthaven and the expansions and stuff like that, and we still make that mistake every now and again. It's just one of those things where you are making a decision, and then you're like, no, I'm going to change it up. I'm going to do this instead. And it's like you keep the one card because you're like, oh, well, I want to go that fast. That's going to be my first card. And then you're like, oh, okay, no, I'm going to do this. So I put those down, and it's like, oh, shoot, I was trying to do both bottom actions on the card. So how do I make this work now? And the one thing that's nice about playing in person is you can be like, okay, I'm going to swap this card out. I'm still at the same initiative, but I accidentally selected the wrong card. And usually, as long as you're not doing it every turn, you'll be like, all right, well, mulligan here on this one. As long as it doesn't like drastically change how the turn would have happened. So you have that option to have a little bit of grace for that at times. But yeah, that is the one thing that gets a little bit tricky, and it's easy to sort of be looking at your hand of cards, and it is really hard to determine what the best move is. But it's one of those things where as you play as a character more, you start to figure out how you want to play as them and what shtick you want to try to do, and it becomes a little bit faster. And sort of like we talked about before, is you sort of pick out, oh, okay, this is usually what I do as my opening two cards because I want to do this move and I want to do this attack, right? Or I want to get this card out to set up, so it's like maybe John puts out his augment card because he wants that out because he wants to do a big attack on the second turn. So you kind of get into your rhythm of, as long as there's not something really crazy happening in the first turn, these are the things that I always do the first turn. This is then what I follow that up with. And you kind of have your combination of abilities that you like to sort of trigger one after the other because it helps to set things up. But then it's still flexible enough that if you get kind of knocked out of that or something needs you to do something different, you have a lot of tools at hand to be able to figure that out. So yeah, I don't know. It can be tricky. You can make mistakes. But sometimes you just got to roll with it.
Yeah, live with it. I think it's really interesting how you feel out your characters because, Burns, you played a number of different characters. I've played the Spellweaver in 2 separate campaigns, and I played the Craighart in another one. It's like, it just takes a few scenarios to really just get a feel for how to set up your stick. And I think that's awesome, and I also just love the modifier deck and the tools that you have to upgrade. It's so satisfying to get rid of those negatives and to start really firing off good attacks. So, John, from what we've played so far, where does Gloomhaven, the digital version, shine?
I mean, the online component of the entire thing, right? Like, it just works, and you can get in, and the conversion of this being shifted from physical to digital is fantastic. And then just Gloomhaven in general, just the gameplay, the setting, the atmosphere, it's a gem of a game. So, like, all in all, it's like, to me, like, whether you're playing it digitally or locally, which I'd still love to try, like a physical version of it, it's just a lot of fun.
Well, move on back and we will, dude.
All right, maybe this is why John Munch is moving back to Minnesota. It's all for Gloomhaven.
It's all for OiO. Did I give you a chance to finish your point, or did I cut you off?
I'm good.
Awesome. Burnsy, having played 100 million billion hours of Gloom/Frosthaven, like, where does this digital version of the game shine for you?
It's a pretty to really good representation. of the board game in digital form.
Well, let's
aside from a. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, let's poke at that. Like you mentioned earlier that there were some bugs and some things that you found frustrating. Maybe we should get into them right here because, like, basically my take is that this game is awesome. So where does this game struggle? Like, what issues did you have that takes this from being a phenomenal representation of the game to a pretty good to good?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that there needs to be a much more robust undo mechanism. Because it's so easy when you're trying to like move quickly and you accidentally select one card instead of the other, and if you just hit that extra button press after that, there's like no going back, where it really shouldn't be that hard to just like step it back a turn. Now, you could like go back to the menu and restart the entire turn, but it's like if you're at initiative like 70 and you've gone after everything but one thing, that's a lot to kind of go back through and replay. And so I think that is one of the biggest things that the game could use, is just a little bit more of a forgiving and robust undo mechanism to be able to like take it back a couple of steps once you actually can kind of see like the mistake that you made, and that you maybe wouldn't have made if you were looking at it a little bit different way.
I think one thing to note too, as Joey is talking this through, is remember when he played on the PlayStation 5. So he is working with a controller, and Tom and I had mouse and clicky clicky, right? And like there were several times where like just click the thing, just click it, and he's like, I can't. There's no thing I had. So he's like moving a cursor like around. I don't even know how it's working on the PS5. So all the problems he is complaining about, like to me, like I do agree. Like it would be good to have an undo button, especially considering you're on a clunkier interface. But if you play on a PC, you won't experience the clunky interface.
So, Bernsey, at what point in your hundreds and millions and billions of hours of playing the Havens on tabletop, at what point did it click that it's like, man, I wish I could just play this with my PS5 and like, were you emulating holding your controller as you're like moving the chits around the board?
No, I mean I never thought about it, and it's funny because I bought the Steam version of the game like when it was in early access, like pretty much right as it was released into early access. So I've had it for a long time. I've played a handful of scenarios on my computer. I just prefer to play on console. Like I like being in my living room and not like in my office where I work. Because I'm in here enough, like working. I'd like to just sort of get away from it. I also have a terrible desk setup, and so it's not super comfortable to be sitting at for long periods of time. And I will say that the console interface isn't like super terrible. It's just there's a few instances that you get into. So like one of the things is there'll be times where if you're taking damage and you can lose a card to not take any of that damage. So it's basically like you're throwing that ability away in order to stave off the damage. And sometimes you have to do it because you'll be exhausted if you don't, and you don't want to be exhausted because then you've basically hosed your group unless you're at the very end of the scenario. And so it's one of those things where when you're going to choose that card, you can't look back at the other cards that you have in your hand. And so it's like, that's like one of the frustrating things is it's like, normally I'd be able to be like, okay, what all cards did I have? And you can kind of look through it quick and say, okay, no, I'm gonna keep that one because I'd rather burn like most of these other things instead of that. Sometimes you just know that, but sometimes it's good to have a way to look at that. And I don't know if you can do that on the computer version. But yeah, that's one of the things that's a little bit clunky, and figuring out how to get back to look at like all of the cards that you have. You figure it out after a while. It's a lot more intuitive, or it's just like, oh, I just mouse over this and I can see it. But I think there's a lot of mechanisms of the game that they did pretty well with that. One of the other things, and the game's been out for quite a few years now, and obviously, it's been across a couple of developers, so Flaming Fowl was the one that made the original version of the game. and then they kind of noped out of the game to work on their next game. So then Minsk, Saber Interactive Minsk, took over the console ports and then are doing the updates basically once they started getting the console ports for the PC version also. But there are, other than the bug that Tom was talking about, there's still some other bugs that we ran into in the game that are just sort of like, this has been out for quite a few years now. It's a little bit of a bummer that there's still things like that. And granted, I know software, can't get rid of all the bugs. Sometimes things just happen. But like, for instance, there was one time where it's like the one card I for sure wanted to play, it just would not let me select it to play it on the next turn. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is the card I want to play. I could select any other card, but I couldn't select this card. And it was just so frustrating. And I think there's been a few other things like flying creatures will sometimes fly into obstacles and then you can't hit them, but sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, which really they shouldn't be able to end a turn within an obstacle, like via the board game. Like, they're not supposed to be able to do that, I don't think. And so it's just like, there's a few of these things that just sort of kind of happen. And then, yeah, it's like almost like clockwork. Pretty much after every scenario, every other scenario, Tom has to exit back out and jump back in because it just won't let us continue onward. It's, it's said that it's waiting for other players when we're like, nope, we're just waiting for Tom.
Yeah.
So, it's just some of these things where it's like, if they could tidy some of that stuff up. One of the other really clunky things is if there's a lot of enemies, or even if it's friendly computer-controlled characters, it takes forever to get through all of those things moving. And there's an option, I don't know if it's just for me as the host of the game, to hold down buttons so that they do it in fast motion. But it just takes forever to get through some of those activations.
Well, for example, we had one scenario where things were spawning like every turn behind us. And so by the end of that, we're trying to advance to the end of the map across all these tiles. And like, there's a dozen dudes on the board. And it's like, each one goes tile, tile, tile.
Yeah.
Then the next dude goes tile, tile, tile. It's like, oh, I'm going to go take a poop. I'll be back about the time they're done with their activation.
And I get why it does it that way, right? Because it's calculating, right, every enemy based upon their initiative. Say, okay, this guy, because when you play the game in the real board game, right, you do move by move, and you say, okay, so this, I'm attacking with this enemy now, and this enemy says that I'm closest to this person. So I'm going to go ahead and if I'm attack that person. If that person's dead, well, then it changes where the next guy goes. So I get why they have to do it, but they should be able to just be like, press the button and go and zip through it, and then unless just do it. Let me set super fast mode. I don't care, right? And have it take 2 seconds. You're a computer. You should be able to do this.
Yeah, and like there's an option to turn on fast animations, but it's like an all or nothing thing. So then it's like everything is a fast animation. And I tried doing that like when I was playing like a personal game, and I hated it. I couldn't stand it because it's like, sure, any of the stuff that's not super consequential right now, I want to happen like quickly, as fast as possible. But then it's like when something's attacking me or I'm attacking them, I'd rather like see it happen instead of have it be like, I don't know. And maybe that's just me being, obstinate and particular about how I want to see things. But so yeah, that's one thing that I'm super interested because Frosthaven. It was shortly after we decided we were going to play this for Game Club. See, now I'm doing it, Tom.
One of us.
Shortly after we decided we were going to play this for Game Club, they announced that Frosthaven Digital is happening, and that the closed beta has started. I think it was end of March, early April, and so I'm really curious to see, because this is a completely different developer. None of the first two developers that worked on Gloomhaven is making this game. And so I'm super interested to see what they're going to do with it and how they're maybe going to improve on some of these foibles that still exist with the original Gloomhaven digital game. But otherwise, I do think that the things that I like about it, now that we got the negatives out of the way, is I really like the way that they made the characters, monsters, and abilities look. They're all really fun to see play out. on, when you're in combat and you're actively fighting things. I think it's really cool. They made the elite monsters and the normal version of the monsters look different, which I think is really cool too. So it's like little touches like that. They have skins, so you could use different skins, although there is only one alternate skin for each character class that we have right now. I don't know if you unlock more randomly as you play through the game or something, but that's kind of cool. And so I really like the look of the game when it's actually being played within the scenarios. And like we talked about before, the narration is really good. It helps to actually understand like what's going on with the story, maybe a little bit better than just reading it out of the book. So I like that a lot. So yeah, I think there is a lot to like about it. And if you've wanted to see what this game is all about, and you don't want to spend I don't even know how much it is at retail anymore. I mean, Jaws of the Lion's $50. That's usually what I tell people to start with, which also they have all of Jaws of the Lion is in the game. It's like a $10 DLC. Or it's like I bought the gold edition of the game when it released on consoles, which came with Jaws of the Lion. And so it's 4 new classes and then a 25 campaign scenario. And so, it's nice having all of that in the game too, and just more variety of character types that you can play as. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's good. I think it's a good way to jump into the game if you don't have a regular like in-person gaming group.
In my opinion, Gloomhaven is the best way to play something online with your friends. It is the best way to play online with your friends. You're working towards a common goal, but you have your own motivations. You have tactical choices, but they're not so brain-burning that you can't yuck it up with your friends. Like, it's just, for me, it is a phenomenal game, and I just love the format. It's like as close as you can come to playing a board game online with your friends. Like, it's an awesome game, and I think it's a very fun representation. So
Agreed.
If and when we do part 2 of this, because we're going to move on to another game next, and then our intent is to keep playing this and to do a part 2 after we've experienced a much wider swath of it. If and when we do that part 2, Burns, what do you hope for out of Gloomhaven?
I mean, I'm just excited to see what you guys think of a lot of the other different character classes that you can unlock, and just some of the other evolving aspects of the game. I am curious if there's a couple aspects that I really don't think that they put into Gloomhaven Digital, so I'm really curious to see if it's actually in there, and if it's as terrible as it was in the board game, and I'll leave it at that. Or obtuse, maybe that's a better way to put it, as obtuse as it is in the board game. And so I'm really interested to see how much of that stuff was in there as well. But yeah, and I think also the really fun thing about Gloomhaven in general is when someone retires and they change characters, it's a completely different, group dynamic. Because, if Tom's no longer this spellcasting character and instead he's going to be this big hulking like bruiser, well, that kind of changes the way I'm going to play with the Craighheart probably. And it might change the way that John would play as the Mind Thief. And then John retires the Mind Thief, and he's going to get some other character that does something different. How does that change the whole group? And I think that's a lot of the fun that we just haven't gotten to yet. And I'm really excited to see. I'm really excited to see how that develops as we continue to play through it.
Yeah, I mean, me too. I want to see more characters, right? That's the thing. Like, I want to see how the story unfolds, right? I do want to see where our quote-unquote bad choices are taking us. But I also just want to see, like, more of the game mechanics unlock. I want to see more of those things that we haven't seen just because we just haven't played enough to, and toggled the right switches to, like, retire someone and move on and, like, get secret characters and all the other fun stuff. So I'm looking forward to that next step.
I agree. I'm also excited for new characters, but I'm also excited to get to a point where we're just stomping scenarios too. Like, we've been stuck in this one with Jexera. We've attempted at least twice, failed both times, and it's like, I can't wait until we can just roll through that and be like, yeah, we got good, son. So I'm just excited to play more Gloomhaven. That is going to wrap up our discussion on Gloomhaven, the digital edition. We'll be back next month to discuss Claire Obscure Expedition 33 by Sandfall Interactive. Burns, this is one of the games that I put up for this month, right?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it. I don't know. We've so much like random back and forth, and so many games we're throwing out. But yeah, we threw it up in the Discord with a bunch of other options to see who voted on what, and this was the highest bidded on or voted on game, and it's that Clear Obscure. It's so hot right now. It's so many people are saying it's their goatee right now. It's like. All of the, Final Fantasy 1 through 9 fanboys, 1 through 10 fanboys are like, this is why Final Fantasy sucks now, because it's not turn-based and awesome like Clair Obscure is, like Expedition 33 is. And so I'm really interested to see how this game is, how this matches up, and to be able to maybe throw a little bit of spike at some of the, old Final Fantasy grognards that say that it's not been good since the PS2 era. Because I think we could still do that and still talk lots of good things about Expedition 33. So.
Have you experienced it at all yet? Either of you?
No.
I
bought it.
I installed it today.
Burns, why did you buy it? It's on Game Pass.
I want to play on my PlayStation.
Oh.
He needs a trophy.
Yeah. Okay.
There's
cool.
that, and it's just like I don't know. I haven't turned on my Xbox Series S in a while, and also it's one of those things where I don't know. I continue to hear so many people like bag on the performance of the Series S as games are getting like more graphically superior. And since this is an Unreal 5 Engine 5 game, I'm just sort of like, well, I have a PS5 for a reason. I want to play something that's a little bit more graphically. Maybe substantial. I'd rather just play that on my PlayStation. So I don't know. That's a series of reasons.
Yeah, it is a series of reasons that I find very interesting. So I don't know. I stumbled across this game because I was just looking at the Xbox app on my computer and like, oh, this weird thing that I've never heard of is like trending. It's like, oh, so I watched the video. I'm like, oh, that looks really cool. So I downloaded it. I played the first 10 minutes or so. It feels very French to me.
It's very French. It's French developer, right? Oh. So yes, it is. It is very, very French, which I'm kind of excited for.
But,
right?
Oh, Burns just dropped the microphone.
He just dropped. He's like, and I'm out.
Tune in next week to find out what Burns wanted to say.
No, but they're people that were hardcore fans of like a lot of the RPGs that we were growing up. So. It's like a love letter to a lot of those games and a lot of more recent like RPGs, and so that's why I'm super interested also. And I've heard that the voice acting and just like the story is supposed to be really good. The voice acting is awesome, and I don't know. I'm just really pumped to sort of see what the spectacle is and why this is everybody is saying this is the best turn-based combat game ever.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Should be a pretty big discussion. I think that Brian and Billy are planning to at least play it with us and talk about it next month. So that'll be fun. I hope you enjoy this standalone segment of the Outside is Overrated podcast, and I hope you'll jump in and play with us. Please support Outside is Overrated at patreon.com/OiO. And until next month, stay inside, kids.